Ever
for Tom.
wondered which truck engine rules them all? We analyzed the 20 most iconic heavy-duty truck engines from around the world, diving deep into torque curves, real-world fuel economy, repairability, and power-to-weight ratios. 20. Toyota HDT Japan. Let's start with one of the lesser-known engines in the heavy trucking world, Toyota's HDT. Found primarily in regional workhorses like the Dyna and some Hino collaborations, this engine is solid but limited. With outputs around 220 to 250 horsepower and torque in the 430 pound-feet range, it's clearly not built for serious heavy haulage. It excels in reliability and simplicity, but simply isn't competitive in the world of full-size freight-hauling diesels. It's a city runner, not a highway king. 19. FPT Cursor 13, Italy. Fiat Powertrain Technologies, or FPT, powers Iveco's trucks and other European commercial vehicles. The Cursor 13 sounds impressive on paper, 570 horsepower and 1,845 pound-feet of torque, but in practice, it has suffered from inconsistent software tuning and issues
Oh, it's Friday night.
ゆうちゃん
ひーちゃんです。ゆうちゃんとひーちゃんは二卵性の双子で、現在生後7ヶ月です。
はい。今回は質問でもよくいただくんですけど、ゆうちゃんきーちゃんが父母どちらに似ているか検証したいと思います。
以前 Q&A 動画を撮った時に同じような質問をいただいてて、その時の回答としてはゆうちゃんは僕にできーちゃんはあかりにだというお答えをしました。
はい。
視聴者さんのコメントでもそういう風に見てくださってる方も多いんですけど、実際にそうなのかというところを僕たちの幼少期の写真を使って比較しながら検証していきたいと思います。
はい。2人とも低出生体重児で、ちょっと生まれたばっかりの時はあんまり顔がそこまではっきりしてなくて、どっちにっていうのは分かってなかったんですけど、生後7ヶ月になってきてだいぶ2人の顔もはっきりしてきたので、結構幼少期の写真と比べるとどっちに似てるっていうのが分かりやすくなってきたかなと思うので、ここで1回動画を撮りたいと思います。
はい
はい。
順番に2人のパーツが僕たちとどこが似てるかっていうのを比較して検証していきたいと思います。まずは僕たちの幼少期の写真と、ゆうちゃんきーちゃんの写真4人並べたやつを用意しました。
はい。
それがこちらです。
はい。
はい。
どうでしょうか。左上がゆうちゃん、右上がけんじ、左下があかり、右下がきーちゃんです。
はい。みんな
こう正面を向いてる写真を探して使ってみました。これはだいたいケンジとあかりはだいたい3ヶ月ぐらい、ゆうちゃんきーちゃんは割と最近の6ヶ月ぐらいの写真です。
はい。
どうですか。こうやって並べると、なんかみんな顔が丸いけど、なんとなくこう私以外の3人の方が顔丸い感じするな。
そうやな。
でもなんかこうやって見て四つ子って言われてもおかしくないような。
なんとなく全員似てる感じはするから。
でそもそも私たちケンジとあかりも視聴者さんに兄弟ですかって聞かれたりとか、顔似てますねって言われることが結構これまで多かったんで、そもそも私たちがジャンルとしても似てるのかもしれないです。
はい。夫婦の顔は似てくるという話あるんですけど、そもそもが丸顔やし、系統としては同じような顔やったんで、夫婦になってより寄ってきたのかもしれないです。
はい。ただこのゆうちゃんきーちゃんが生まれた時に二卵性っていうのは分かってたんですけど、多分似てる子が生まれてくるんじゃないかなって思ってました。ただ生まれてきたゆうちゃんきーちゃんを見るとあんまり私たちとしては似てないというか、
感じはしないかなと思います、
はい、
それぞれのパーツに似てるところもあるので、結構ちょっとパーツごとに見ていきたいと思います、はい、まずは一番ポイントとなる目からちょっと他の写真も用意してるんですけど、それがこちらです。はい、こんな感じです。
どうでしょうか。同じ写真も出てくるんですけど、目は結構はっきり分かれてるかなと思ってて、ゆうちゃんは父に、きーちゃんは母にだと思ってます、
なのでこの印象が強いので、ゆうちゃんが僕にできーちゃんがあかりにと言われる方も多いのかなと思います、はい、確かに目の形はそういう風になってると思います、
ただきーちゃんに関して言うと、私よりちょっと目離れてる、離れ気味かなと思います、これはだから多分ケンジの方が目離れてるんで、ケンジに似たのかなというところです、ちょっとミックスされてる感じですな。
形も大体は僕たちに似てると思うんですけど、ちょっと違う部分もあるんで、完全にだからどっちかの目というよりかはちょっとだけお互いの要素が入ってるのかなと思います、はい、きーちゃんの方が目まん丸したイメージなんですけど、あかりがちっちゃい時に比べるともうちょっと垂れ目、なんか目尻の方が垂れてる感じがします。
若干垂れ目な、
なのでおおよそは目の形一緒なんですけど、これも完全一致というかちょっと寄ってると、似てるという部分かなと思います。はい。一緒なんですけど、これも完全一致というかちょっと寄ってると、似てるという部分かなと思います。はい。次は眉毛です。
はい。これも結構顔の印象を決めると言われてる眉毛ですが、これはこんな感じです。
最初の写真を使うんですけど、こうやって見ると、これもちょっとミックスされてそうな気はするんですけど、ゆうちゃんの眉毛があかりの眉毛に近いかなと、できーちゃんの眉毛が僕に近いかなと思います、はい、であかりのちっちゃい時の写真見ると結構三角眉毛、
そうかもめ眉毛というか、結構はっきり三角山形っていうかな、の眉毛になってます。
ゆうちゃんきーちゃんでいうとどっちかというとゆうちゃんの方が三角形の眉毛になってるかなと思うので、あかりに似てるかなと思います。きーちゃんは割と太くて、平行気味、
そうやな、平行眉な
なんでどっちかというと僕に近いかなと思います、でもこれもどっちかにめちゃくちゃ似てるかと言われると、ちょっとわからない部分もあるんで、これはちょっとずつこれもお互い似てるのかなと思います。はい。
眉毛に関して言うと、ゆうちゃんは結構生まれた時はほんまに色素が薄くて、結構金髪みたいな感じで眉毛の形全然わからなかったんですけど、最近になってすごいはっきりしてきました。でこんなに三角やったんやみたいな気づきました。
でもあかりのちっちゃい時の眉毛がすごい、
めちゃくちゃわかりやすい。でそこまでは三角になってないかなとは思います、
じゃあ次は鼻、同じ写真で見ていくと、鼻に関して言うとゆうちゃんはあかりに近いかなと思います、できーちゃんは僕に近いかなと思います。はい。
結構鼻も顔の中心にあるから印象つくところだと思うんですけど、結構きーちゃんが私はパパにだと思いますみたいなコメントも結構来てて、その印象もあるんかなと思います、こうやって並べるとほんまに鼻は父になのかなと思います、
この時点だから目と鼻が逆がついててちょっと面白いんですけど、
でゆうちゃんは実際うちの母とかが見ると、私のちっちゃい時の鼻にすごい似てるっていうんで、やっぱ私になのかなと思います、
なのできーちゃんの方が僕に似てるんで将来鼻は高くなると思います
そんな変わらんねん鼻
高くなるな、
変わらんやんな続きまして口です、これ口は結構難しくて、最初どうかなと思ったんですけど、ゆうちゃんゆうちゃんの口は金地にじゃないかと、父にではないかと思ってます、ゆうちゃんは結構癖で下唇を巻き込むような顔をすることが多いんですけど、寝ている時とか結構おでこ唇出てくるんですけど、その唇の形がめちゃくちゃケンジに似てます、結構ケンジは下唇が厚いねんな。
2人とも唇は分厚い方だと思うんですけど、形でいうと僕の方が下唇の方が分厚いようになってます、
上唇より厚いですな。
僕がちっちゃい頃の写真とゆうちゃんの今の写真見比べると形は結構似てる感じやな。下唇がぷくっとしてるので、口は割とゆうちゃんは僕に似てるのかなと思います。
はい。ただ大きさで言うとケンジは結構口大きいんですけど、ゆうちゃんはほんまに夕食とか食べる時もすごい口ちっちゃくて、スプーン入れるのが大変なぐらいおちょぼ口なんで、大きさはもしかしたらどっちかというと私に似てきたのかなと思います。なんかこれも不思議な感じなんですけどミックスされてます。
でキーちゃんの口はあかりの口かなと思います。
はい。これもまだちょっとはっきりしてない部分もあるんですけど、キーちゃんはそんなに下唇と上唇の差がない、両方ちょっと厚めかなと、私もそうなんで、私かなと思ってます。
でもちっちゃい頃の写真見たら形すごい似てるんで、キーちゃんの口はあかりの口に似てるかなと思います。
はい。
これも生まれた時あんまり分からなかったから、最近になってどっちにかなっていうのは分かってきた感じです。
はい。
で続いて耳なんですけど、耳の正面からの写真っていうのはなかったから、今の耳と比較してどっちに似てるかっていうのをやりたいと思います。
はい。まずはゆうちゃん。
はい。
してください。
ゆうちゃんの耳はこんな感じです。
はい。こんな感じです。
どっちかというと僕の耳に似てるかなと思います。
はい。
結構耳自体は薄い感じかな。なんで僕に似てると思います。
はい。ケンジの耳はこんな感じです。
はい。
ちょっと薄くて若干外向いてるかな。
で耳たぶもそんなにない感じ。ここがもうくっついてる感じやから。なのでゆうちゃんに似てると思います。はい、次はキーちゃん。キーちゃんの耳はこんな感じです。はい、耳見してこんな感じでぽってりした耳です。はい、ちょっと福耳気味の分厚めの耳をしております。はい、 はい、あかりの耳はこんな感じです。
はい、
キーちゃんの耳に似てるかなと思います。
結構分厚めで耳たぶもしっかりある感じです。ゆうちゃんは結構薄いから、耳はキーちゃんの耳に似てるのかなと思います。はい、
次は輪郭と髪型。はい、これを見ていきたいと思います。
はい、でこれ結構面白い写真があったんですけど、これはケンジが5ヶ月、キーちゃんが2ヶ月の写真です。はい、わかりますでしょうか？全く同じ顔の形と髪型です。
今大人になってな2人とも丸顔っていう話してたんですけど、ちっちゃい頃を見ると明らかに僕は丸顔です。
はい、まん丸やな。
でもこの写真はもう輪郭めちゃくちゃ似てるなと思うんやけど、髪型も似てます。はい、僕は結構ちっちゃい時髪薄くて、多分2歳ぐらいまでずっと薄かったんですけど、キーちゃんも割と髪は薄い方だと思って、それも僕に似てるのかなと思います。ただ僕のちっちゃい時よりは全然髪生えてる。
そうそう、この写真もな5ヶ月と2ヶ月の比較で一緒ぐらいやから、キーちゃんのが髪多いな。
でゆうちゃんの輪郭と髪型についてはあかりに似てると思います。
はい、まず輪郭は完全に私に似てると思います。はっきりこう比べると同じような写真があったので、で髪型に関しては若干私よりはゆうちゃんの方が短いかなっていう感じです。
薄い
な。
細いかな。
そうやな。
茶色いもんな。
色素が結構薄めなのかなと思います。
あかりは結構ちっちゃい頃から髪黒々しいから、若干髪質は違うかもしれんけど、髪型は似てる。
割と似てるかなと思います。
だいぶ今伸びてきたんやけど、なんか一時はめっちゃ揃ってて、でこのなんか真ん中のとこだけこう長く伸びてたから、あかりもちっちゃい時なんかそんな感じの髪型になってるんで、生え方は似てるかなと思います。はい、
この写真は私が7ヶ月でゆうちゃんは6ヶ月ぐらいの写真なんで、やっぱり私の方がちょっと髪は長いかなっていう感じです。なので輪郭は結構はっきり父にと母にで分かれてるかなと思います。これもキーちゃんが時々パパにと言われる一つの理由かなと思います。まん丸な顔なゆうちゃんはそこまで丸くないもんな。丸いけどちょっ
と違う丸さやな。輪郭は結構違うから、今まで見てきた目とか鼻とか、そのパーツがこの輪郭に合わせてついてるんで、ちょっと目の幅が違ったりとか、若干そういう違いが出てきてるのかなと思います。はい、だから結構骨格がそれぞれ似てるっていう感じかもしれないです。 あとはパ パーツではないんですけど表情、
はい、
これもどっちに似てるかなっていうのがあったので見たいと思います。
はい、
ゆうちゃんはこちらです。完全に僕と一致してます
同じような顔の写真がたくさんありました、これは2人とも3ヶ月ぐらいかな、の写真になってます。
動画を見ていただいてる方はよくわかると思うんですけど、割とゆうちゃんの方がこういう
咁 Air Awards 其實幫咗我哋 Wise Chemical 慳咗好多本上成單匯款嘅手續費，基本上如果傳統銀行去做嘅話，要120萬。如果 App 收買對方嘅要240萬。當有10單嘅時候，其實啲匯款已經400萬，對於我哋中小企嚟講，其實係有一定嘅壓力。咁 Air Awards 幫到我哋慳咗呢筆錢嘅時候，可以用喺其他。
知らない人がいると固まるという性格やったらしく、ゆうちゃんもちょっと人見知り気味ではあるんで。
そうやな、あとカメラを向けると結構ガチッと固まる感はある。
カメラ見知りしてるから、同じような固まった表情になってるかなと思います、はい、結構愛想悪く映るんですけど、それは父にでした。はい、ゆうちゃんはカメラないところでは結構ケタケタ笑ってたりするんですけど、カメラを
それで撮ろうと思って向けたらガチッと固まることもあったりして、カメラ見知りしてるのかなと思います。ケンちゃんなんか地蔵って呼ばれてたやろ。
そうマジで固まるから地蔵と呼ばれました
でもそれ分かるよな、ゆうちゃんも結構ビシッと固まるんで同じような感じかなと思います。でアルバムとか見てても同じようなこういう表情多かったので、これは父譲りなのかなと思ってます、はい。
でキーちゃんの表情に関してはどっちかというと赤にこれはめちゃくちゃ表情に似てるっていう感じはなかったんですけど、ゆうちゃんが似すぎてて
そうなんだキーちゃんは結構こう愛想いいというか、割とニコニコしてたりとか、表情豊かな感じなんですけど、アルバムとか見てる感じはどっちかというと私に似てるかなと思います、はい、でちょっとポケッとしてる顔も多かったりします、めっちゃ喋るやん。ゆうちゃんも同意ですか？はいあと最後に肌の色に関してですが、これはゆうちゃんが父に、きーちゃんが母にです、これはもう断定できるなと思います、結構ゆうちゃんはすごい透明感があって、もうなんか新生児の時から結構白かったです、ちょっと横断とかな新生児らしい黄色さみたいなのはあったんですけど、割と他の赤ちゃんに比べると白い感じがしてました、できーちゃんに比べてもやっぱり白かったです、
きーちゃんもなんか白いんやけど、ゆうちゃんの方がより白いという感じで、僕も今も白いんですけど、生まれた時から割と色白でした。それはゆうちゃんに受け継がれたのかなと思います、今でも日焼けしたら僕は赤くなって、ちょっとは黒くなるんですけどすぐ戻るタイプ。
黒くなったりはせえへんねんな、
なのでゆうちゃんもそんな感じで日焼けしたら赤くなるタイプだと思います。
Really sunburnt.
明かりは割と日焼けすると
It turns into a maroon shade.
赤くなったりはせず、綺麗にこんがり焼けるタイプで、でもなんかちっちゃい時はすごい白かったみたいなのを母がいつも言ってて、結構ケンジには信じてもらえてなかったんですけど、キーちゃん結構白かったから、あ、そうなんやってやっと信じてもらいました。
でも日焼けしやすいし吸収しやすいから、まだ保育園も行ってるんですけど、今若干キーちゃんの方が日焼けしやすいかなと思います。
そうやな、若干もうキーちゃんは日焼けしてる感あります。
毎日日焼け止め塗ってるんやけどな、キーちゃんの方がちょっと焼けてそう、なのでこれは母にかなと思います、というわけで順番にパーツを見ていきました。今までのやつをまとめるとこんな感じです、これはすごい面白いのがなんか結構半々で分かれてるというのが、最初にゆうちゃんは僕にで、キーちゃんはあかりにという話したんですけど、これを見ると一概にそうでもないというのが分かると思います、
もうちょうど半分ずつ綺麗に分かれてるなっていう感じです、しかも同じところがない、
そう
全部パーツごとで見ていって、
For 9 parts. What has 5 and what has 4?
だから2人があんまり似てなく感じるのかなと思います。
面白いな、ほんまにバラバラで撮っていってる感じ。普通やったらな、例えば鼻は2人とも赤に似てるとかさ、耳はどっちかに似てるとかありそうなんですけど、なぜかそれぞれ全部バラバラに似てるという
で一つ言えることは私たちのちっちゃい時の写真より、ゆうちゃんきーちゃんのが可愛いですいい感じでなミットされたんじゃないかなと思います。
だからまあ輪郭の話の時に言ったんですけど、まあ、例えばキーちゃんは明和あかりに似てる。
ほら
いや俺よろしくどうぞ。ゆうちゃんきーちゃんよろしくどうぞ。しゃっくりしてる。
お腹の中でもめっちゃしゃっくりしてたもん。赤ちゃんってなんか変な音めっちゃする。
キスをあげたり。先に帰ってきたキーちゃんはもうで昼ですよ。
同じぐらいだけどな、退院した時は体重早くも週間先輩なんでこのおうちの
初めてのダブル抱っこです。双子。ダブル抱っこです。
重みを感じるでも2人のこれが中に入ってたとは中の
プリッとした。いつかこうやって授乳もするんでしょうか。ダブルで。
かわいい嬉しいや
まだ直接は難しいからな。
ちっちゃいからな、
搾乳して哺乳瓶って感じやけど。続きましてキーさんお持ち台です。泣いてます。
20回ぐらいはするから多分20回
ミルクしますか。しますか。
20回ぐらいは
続きましてキーさんお持ち台です。泣いてます。ミルクしますか。こちらの方お食事のご用意ができました。すごく泣き叫んでいましたが、はいどうぞ。
はいよ
キーちゃんの方が飲むのが下手です。チュパチュパ言ってる。
全然うまくならへんだろうね。こちらはすや寝ました。飲んでます一生懸命。
a fresh pepper.
起きたびっくりして起きたびっくりしたなめっちゃ起きてる
夕方6時前お風呂タイムです。
はい
いいよ失礼いたします。ゆうちゃん泣いてます。
ゆうちゃんはご機嫌です
今までは一人だけやったからな、木浴初めて連続お風呂入れ係とお風呂上がりの係交代し台所で入れてます。いつも
It's kind of insufficient.
ご機嫌なキーさんから
キーさんからご利用させていただきます。
ご機嫌なそれ行こうかこれで気持ちこれで
寝てます。好きやな。暑いですか？湯加減どうですか？良さそうです。だいぶ沐浴も慣れたな。知らないだけど。抱っこしてた。泣きやんだと思った。
お風呂待ち
かゆいところはありませんか？はい、しっくりお願いしますよ。頑張ってるよ。寝てる。寝てるね。ほら。最初はやん泣きしてたのに。繰り返して帰りようになってきた。はい、オーケー。はい。いきます。泣くで泣くで泣くで。泣くで泣くで。ほい、やります。今日は珍しく料理にあげても泣いてない。以来どうした？この段階で泣きたらもうすぐ泣くぞ。よし。次の係パスします。半分で。はいはいはい。
はい湯上がりさん
はい。
もらいます
こちらでお願いします。はい。泣きてる。はい。いきます。初めてだな、ゆうちゃん。ここで。
知らなかったご挨拶させていただきますよいしょ間違った
はい。お湯を変えます。
Change water tank. Change water.
中失礼しますじゃあ
はい。はい。お願いします。ゆうちゃん
Two of the following videos are true, while the other one is trash. Can you spot the fake? Season 4, Episode 1. Round 1, let's begin. If you take some dry ice and stick a roughly room temperature coin on the dry ice, it will at first squeak, and then once it's deep enough that it can stay on its own, you can let go of the coin, and the sublimation will cause the coin to move back and forth. If you take two different colored pencils and place one on top of the other, you can see that the red pencil is on top. However, if you take a thin piece of transparent plastic called a Luber's lens, the long strips of transparent bumps manipulate light passing through in such a way that when you look at the pencils like this through the lens, it now looks like the white pencil's on top. By now you already know that citrus fruits like oranges or lemons contain enough flammable oil called limonene that when you squeeze it on an open flame, it can produce larger flames like this. You can take this demo up a notch if you buy orange juice with minimal additives, like this one that only has one ingredient, which is oranges. Fill up a tiny atomizer or spray bottle with this orange juice, and when sprayed, those flammable oils have a larger surface area and ignite much more easily on an open flame, making this orange juice spray quite dangerous. This demo shows exactly why the phrase, "you can't put out a wildfire with orange juice," became so popular. You've now seen all three videos, and it's time to pause to vote in the comments for which one you thought was fake. Alright, time for the review. This thin piece of plastic is called a Luber's lens and does work like this. And here it is with more colored pencils, where it's still difficult to tell which colored pencil is actually on top as I orient the lens to go along the direction of each colored pencil. If I cut a cross section of the lens, you can see the bumps much more clearly under a microscope, and here's what that looks like. pieces of different metal alloys attached together. These metal alloys expand different amounts when heated. So if you apply heat to this strip, the object will bend to the left. When it cools down, it returns to being straight. If I instead heat from the left side instead, it will still bend to the left, since it's not a temperature difference, but rather a difference in thermal expansion coefficients that drives the deformation. You've now seen all 3 videos. Pause to vote in the comments which one you thought was fake. Nails, copper wire, and vinegar can be used to create a battery and light up an LED. Walter White famously made a similar battery to jumpstart his RV, although it's up for debate whether this would have actually worked the way he did it. A bimetallic strip also does bend the same way, regardless of whether it's heated from the right side or the left side. That means although this super bright flashlight is strong enough to melt plastic if you're not careful, it did not bring this pendulum to a stop abruptly. I tried my best to edit out the copper plate below, but it's actually the copper and the magnet interacting that causes electromagnetic braking and slows the pendulum to a stop. This is the same phenomenon that caused a magnet to fall much slower through a copper tube in a previous season of Two Truths and Trash. By the way, this episode is sponsored by me and my Two Truths and Trash Science Trivia deck, which has 50 rounds of this show in the form of trivia and is available for purchase on my website, twotruthsandtrash.com. Thanks for your support, and now it's time for the final round, round 3. If you release the butane from one lighter without sparking it, you can use a second lighter that's already burning to light the gas of the first lighter. And as long as you keep the butane flowing, the flame will burn. If you do this again, but place a metal mesh between the 2 lighters, you can still ignite the first lighter's gas from above the mesh. But now the flame will only stay burning above it and won't propagate through the mesh to get to the nozzle of the lighter, even when you put some distance between them like this. This is an energy stick that has 2 metallic strips that you can touch to turn the device on. This shows how the human body is capable of conducting electricity to complete the circuit. However, if you dip your fingers in a bit of tap water and then press the metallic strips, the water insulates your body from the metal, meaning you no longer conduct electricity and the device doesn't turn on. This display is just a thin, clear acrylic rod. If you shine a laser from the side of this acrylic rod, the laser goes through pretty straight, pretty much how you'd expect. However, if you shine the laser at the end of the acrylic rod, the entire display stand illuminates, sort of like a fiber optic cable. You've seen all 3 videos now. Pause to vote in the comments which one you thought was fake. If you thought that a thin metal mesh would prevent the propagation of a flame back to a lighter, you'd be correct. And here's what it looks like using Schlieren optics that I set up in my garage. The metal mesh acts as a heat sink that cools the temperature of the flame to below the ignition temperature of the surrounding gas. This demonstrates the principle that Davy lamps used, which were old lamps designed to make mining operations more safe. If you're working in a mine with an open flame lantern, a gas leak like this would be disastrous. Once the gas reaches an open flame, it ignites and creates a giant fireball. However, in theory, if you surround your open flame with a metal mesh, then if there's a gas leak, the gas entering the mesh will burn, but it won't ignite the surrounding gas outside the mesh. Observing experiments like this that you can't normally see is so cool that I'm making a separate video testing out many other surprising demos that you can't normally see. That Schlieren optics video will be linked here when it's out. Anyway, thin, clear acrylic rods also do work similarly to fiber optic cables, in that the laser will internally reflect inside the tube and illuminate the whole thing. It also works with different sizes of acrylic rod like this one, and it looks especially cool in the dark. That means dipping your fingers in water does not prevent this device from turning on. Water actually increases the ability of your body to conduct electricity, which is why the presence of water is so dangerous when you're operating electrical devices. I made this look like it worked by placing a piece of clear tape to cover most of one of the metal strips. That's what actually insulated my wet fingers from the metal. If I touched the thin slice of metal that wasn't covered by tape, you can see that wet fingers do still work. Here's a quick recap of the final round. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe. It means a ton. Thanks for watching to the end. In each round of
我次次同真係出街撲街好撚似咩咁嘅？咁阿媽收撚完工翻嚟，屌你老媽仲成身汗，我行到街要汗嘅啦。你知我咩啊？雞蛋喺嗰邊啊！咩褲啊？衫褲喺咪喺度？你未換衫褲啊，阿芳？你放我呢度啊？哦，你轉嗰份要轉得太老緊啦，仲開咗雪櫃咩？啲蛋你嘅喊下喊驚咁喊佢啦！啊，仆街！仆街！癲人！癲！你知唔知啊？我話我啲 friend 仆街，佢話屌我成日都話鳩話兩係賤嘅啦，賤 唔係睇要識要幾時學，仲有挑人。誒改冇張。咁嘅衰。呢屋企俾人捉咗係咪啊？我拉佢嘅。哦。咁你點解發現到佢嘅錢？我啲錢唔見晒，開埋夾萬。哎呀，夾萬就咁㗎？哎呀，嗱，請個紙老虎咁犀利，開埋，大家啲牌頂唔到記嘅。金器全部收晒。哎呦，後來咧補翻嚟啦，嗰條攬冇晒，過晒期，收咗幾個月啦。哦，你當時都唔知，我就你都唔帶先會，先會知道唔少啫。我呢度好鬼淡喎，做咗幾多日啊？400個。幾個月咋？嚇！我以前見到佢成日都喺度幫小佢喎，我跟住佢嘛。係啊，我自己亦就係差唔多好似準備炒佢㗎啦。台面嗰啲重要人幫手同佢幫手嘅，即係佢聊心嗰個肥啊，妹仔做。係諗住炒佢㗎啦，點知佢咁撚大膽，原來佢一早已經喺度收緊錢㗎啦。可能準備走㗎啦。哦，你自己都唔知，先未做人哦。佢女要讀書，哎呦咁衰㗎！有冇講搶呢啲咁嘅工人啫？搶呢啲工人真係搶到赤喎，聽細數識考先。呢個李克勤啊？係啊，咁好嘅。你知邊個？我李克勤大撚過我啊！咩日子啊？整咁少錢嘅呢度？哇！篤晒啦嗬！篤晒個禮拜六啊！條頸喺啲揾。哇！我就叫你幫手，呢個仆街你又走，幫你啊！你做咩？唔好。下啦。等我玩幾咁嘅火。呢個產品嘅佢等，即係要買熟悉嘅感覺。咁衰。叫你唔係啊，唔開住啊，等下你煲埋湯先。煲冬瓜湯飲啊！你肚餓未啊？你死仆街又唔沖涼，喺度拗，拉你去沖涼，沖完涼死出嚟食飯，快啲，9秒9。沖咗涼個乾淨啲啊！佢唔舒服啊，有少少傷風。咳聲變晒。串對上到，個死法幾唔出奇喎！咁多少人？嗰時 BB 咁2個女咁大，唔使搶啊！有冇話好大？吞埋佢啦，一陣間話點啊？ 你唔係打緊 online 嗰種嘅咩？係咪可以等人嘅咩？
叫咗開未啊？打咗未啊？邊個打㗎？
我矮咗咧。喂，爭取時間啊！我哋事都要。
你兩公婆平時嘅財政係點分配啊？好簡單啫，兩個字，公平。
各位觀眾大家好，歡迎收睇 HKTWC 嘅風暴速報。今日我哋會同大家跟路徑講到對香港嘅潛在影響。先嚟睇下最新嘅衛星雲圖，可以見到洋樓目前仍然受到較為強烈嘅垂直風切變影響，強對流集中喺中心嘅南邊。但由於佢中心附近嘅上升氣流強烈，暫時未有被破壞結構。現時佢中心附近嘅最高持續風速係90公里每小時，預料向西或者西北偏西嘅方向移動，橫過西北太平洋。由於現時洋樓身喺海水溫度比較高嘅環境下，即使受到乾空氣同埋風切變嘅影響，預料佢仍然會以稍為低於氣候平均值嘅速度增強，但巔峰強度就非常視乎於佢嘅路徑。現時分歧仍然比較大。目前傳統電腦模型，例如歐美模式同埋各大嘅氣象機構預料，洋樓會持續向西北偏西嘅方向移動，靠近沖繩一帶，隨後轉向偏北方向移動並逐漸消散。但現時新興嘅 AI 模型就普遍認為，洋樓會採取偏西甚至西南偏西嘅方向移動，靠近台灣中南部，甚至橫過呂宋海峽，登陸廣東東部沿岸至到福建一帶。由於現時北緯15至20度附近嘅垂直風切變相對較低，海水潛熱較高，可以提供更多嘅能量俾風暴發展。因此，如果洋樓採取較為偏南嘅路徑，佢嘅發展速度會較快，並受到較高層面副熱帶高壓脊嘅引導，採取更加偏南嘅路徑。相反，如果佢採取偏北路徑，身處嘅環境會較差，限制佢嘅發展，甚至令佢逐漸減弱消散。至於實際上邊種情況會發生，就非常視乎洋樓未來1-2日嘅整合速度。至於洋樓有冇機會影響到香港，現時香港天文台預測，同風暴相關嘅不穩定天氣會喺下個禮拜嘅中後期影響中國東南部，而香港星期4、5吹清勁程度嘅西至西南風，漸轉南至東南風，離岸及高地間中達到強風程度。參考過往嘅例子，即使風暴喺香港東面登陸，如果佢進入到香港嘅500公里範圍，天文台有機會需要發出熱帶氣旋警告信號。而現時完全未能排除呢種情況嘅發生。如果洋樓最終比較接近香港，唔排除會對香港下晝中後期嘅天氣構成明顯影響。我哋會同大家密切關注住風暴嘅最新發展，即時用影片、貼文或者直播嘅方式同大家報導。我哋而家亦都改進緊我哋嘅直播畫面，爭取報導嘅同時提供更多多元化嘅資訊。預料會喺下次嘅風暴吹襲嘅時候推出，大家敬請留意啦。我哋下次再見，拜拜。
Most music apps have some kind of one-size-fits-all workout playlist. But the YouTube Music app has ad-free playlists personalized to fit you and your kind of workout. You better work. work index finger. Good YouTube Music Premium. Try 1 month free.
眼前全部白晒，然之後好多小店啊、雪花啊，持續都有觸電，持續都30至到40秒左右。我就喺入邊諗，我諗佢係咪放棄咗救我咧？然之後我就好絕望，我就諗緊下一秒，其實我都係等緊死。
我哋結婚嘅，未過半年，我發現原來我太太已經喺個浴室度冇咗知覺，抱唔到啦，根本佢半成身都係電，即係嗰陣時已經崩潰啊
！Yuki 同阿祥喺深水埗鴨寮街嘅唐樓劏房住咗4年。7月15號 ，Yuki 沖涼嘅時候觸電，男友阿祥當時聽到佢尖叫。
我攞住呢個花灑頭啦，當時開頭30秒咧都冇事嘅，但係30秒之後咧，我就突然 feel 到好大嘅電流傳到去我成身，咁我成個身已經淋濕晒啦，因為沖涼啊嘛，之後我就失控，然之後就跌咗落地下，咁樣坐咗落地下，就咁徒手諗住分開我同個花灑頭啦，所以佢都被電到好幾次，嘗試咗幾次之後，佢都分唔開我啦，咁佢就休克咗2秒，咁我就當時我都好絕望，因為我眼前已經係白晒閃電，好似電視機咁樣，即係已經半昏迷咁樣。之後我男朋友佢醒翻之後都係佢應該都係繼續努力幫我將個花灑頭分開啦，最後係掹住我個胳肋底咧，將我拖出去咯。
嗰陣時個感覺係點樣？
成個人震晒麻痹咯，然之後係同個花灑頭黐住咗一齊，我係分唔開咯，即係我掙扎唔到又鬆唔開佢，好似痙攣咁樣咯，都有啲痛。當下其實我都好絕望，因為佢救咗我4-5次都失敗啦，然之後佢就即係佢反彈咗出去，休克咗2-3秒。呢個時間我就喺入邊諗我諗佢係咪放棄咗救我呢？然之後我就好絕望，我就諗緊下一秒，其實我都係等緊死。
Yuki 整個觸電嘅過程將近1分鐘，阿祥對於成個經歷都仍然心有餘悸，話 Yuki 一度反咗白眼。
但我摸落去我就已經喐唔到啦，電得好犀利，跟住我已經即刻嚇親彈開咗，但我見到佢個樣係已經好唔得。就嚟死咁嘅樣，跟住我又好驚咁啦，我就知應該係我就叫佢鬆手，話你快啲鬆手，但係佢其實唔係好答到我。
呢個係觸電嘅時候，我跌低喺地下個廁紙架界度撳咯，個鐵嘅廁紙架，傷口6 cm 咯，然之後縫咗針未拆線，之後呢啲就係撞傷嗰啲嘢，其實全身都有啲。撞瘀晒咁，我晚晚合埋眼都會諗起觸電嗰個畫面，就失眠瞓唔着覺，都要 keep 住睇醫生，都有開到啲放鬆神經嗰啲藥物俾我。
好彩阿祥及時將 Yuki 喺浴室拖咗出嚟，成功報警，留院2日之後就出院。醫生就話2個人觸電嘅時間太長，肌肉收縮好嚴重，會持續肌肉酸痛，2個都暫時冇辦法工作。阿祥嘅其中一隻手舉高都會痛。
凍薪減薪，殺到埋身。好在有 MOX 保良局，由我做 MOX 保良局局長，推出3大保良政策，保你份糧。政策1 Flexi Boost 高息活期存款。
眠いのとお腹空いたがせめぎ合って。
眠かったやな。あんまね、もう。
また起きたら飲んだらいいよ。
今日はゆうちゃんを母と入ります。
日替わりで入ってます。
うん。
先に入ります。
いってらっしゃい。もうすぐ呼ばれるわ。あ、 張れた。よっしゃ、いるでー。お風呂お風呂。行くで、レッツゴー。はい。なんか喋ってる。なんか楽しんでるぞ。
気持ちいいですか？
気持ちよさそう。楽しんでパスタイム。キーちゃんは健やかに寝てます。その間に2階の寝室の準備。暖房は明かりがつけてくれてる。寝るときはこんな感じで床にマットレスを引いて寝てます。間に双子。生まれた。よいしょ。はい。一丁上がり。はいはいはい。はい。よいしょ。はい、気持ちよかったですか？お疲れ。まずは保湿させていただきます。失礼。はい、ボディ失礼します。はい。気になる？はい。はい、お疲れ。はい、お疲れ様でした。はい、可愛くなった。
ゆうちゃんお風呂上がりね。はい。はい、どうぞ。気持ちよかったな、お風呂。ちょっと眠そうやな。飲んだら寝る？父がお風呂に入ってる間にゆうちゃん飲み終わりました。そしてほぼ寝落ちしてます。きーちゃんと違ってゆうちゃんは静かに入眠しました。寝落ちした。リップでいつも寝てるわ。ちょっとしばらく立て抱っこしてから寝かせます。すやからのパッチリきた。しゃっくり出た。寝るか寝るかこの時間。あよし。ミルク飲んでるときは眠そうにするのにな。一回寝たんじゃない？寝れた。飲み終わり。起きた。なんか起きてる。指さしてる。こんなポーズで寝落ちしました。ゆうちゃん午後10時過ぎ。こうなったらもう平和です。ちょっとだけ晩ご飯タイムにはぐずったけどそれぐらいでしたな。全く寝ない日もありますが、まあだいたい10時11時ぐらいには2人とも寝てるかな。1日何回ぐらい洗ってんやろ。5、6回は洗ってるか。これが終わったら寝室に行きます。2階で寝るので、哺乳瓶などなどを準備して上に持っていきます。夜に使うものを持っていきます。ほら寝てる。 。
夜中2時半、キーちゃんが目覚めました。お腹すいて、しかも90度曲がってる。回転してる。これあかりがしたわけじゃなくて、回転してる。なんか置いとかなかった。くるみとかでガードしな回っちゃう。ゆうちゃんも目覚めた。ひーちゃんの鳴き声で一緒におむつ替えてミルクあげます。そしてあかりは搾乳中。
はい、搾乳しながら変えます。
電動搾乳機。
じっと見てる。
同時にミルクしてるけど、基本はいつもバラバラやな。
自分の担当の方が起きたらおむつ替えてミルクあげてます。
ゆうちゃんときーちゃんは毎日だから場所が変わってる。交互になってますもんね、毎日。
日替わりです。最後の授乳からどれぐらい経ったかな。結構空いてた。ひーちゃんは最後の授乳から6時間半。ゆうちゃん5時間半ぐらい寝てます。
だいぶ寝たな。
この夜の一旦目は割と2人ともまとまって寝てくれるから私たちも睡眠できます。
おむつとかミルクはピオログっていうアプリを使って記録してて、そうやって記録しとかのも分からなくなるような2人の時間が。飲み終わったけどほぼ寝てる。
我打死到烦，烦不烦？
絶対2人とも夜はミルク飲んで寝落ちするな。
2時半前ぐらいに目覚めて20分ぐらいで寝ました。母乳もいっぱい取れてる。さあきーちゃん、ゲップチャレンジやけど寝てるな。来た。ナイス。
The babies are hard to see overnight.
寝ました。暑かった。おやすみ。
4、5。
さっき途中で寝たまった。2時間ぐらいで起きた。起きてない。
こっち見てる。どうした？
起きたか。ゆうちゃんの声で起きた。おはよう。ゆうちゃん寝てます。人の布団で。起きましたか？お腹空いたか？ぐずってたね。ぐずぐずちゃん。ご機嫌ですか？おはよう。相方はね、電気つけても寝てるでね。なんか言ってる。眩しいと言ってます。
東南亞電商市場而家經歷緊爆炸性嘅增長，電商老闆們有冇留意呢3樣嘢呢？
寝起き顔めっちゃ20話超え。起きようか。すまんけど朝はセルフ授乳させてもろてます。というわけで昨日から夜の様子を撮りました。
はい、毎日同じっていうわけじゃなくて、日によっては全然起きひん時もあるし、昨日はどっちかというとちょっとぐずってた方かな。
夜中な、特にひーちゃんがなかなか寝つけずに、最終的に添い寝したの。
最終的に私の布団ではぐっと寝たから、もうそのまましばらく添い寝して30分後ぐらいに動かしました。
ゆうちゃんもな、2回目起きた時かな、ちょっとぐずってで、そこからは添い寝しました。
はい。大体添い寝したらすぐ寝るかな。
いつも夜中は2回ぐらいかな、起きるのは。
そうやな、1、2回ぐらいです。
でも夜は基本よく寝てくれて、ほんまに4時間とか5時間ぐらいは寝てくれるんで、僕たちも割とまとまった睡眠取れるんで助かってはいます。
で今は一緒に4人全員で寝てるんですけど、時々2人ずつ寝てみたりとか、いろいろ試行錯誤しながら日々過ごしてるので、ほぼ日によって違うって感じやな。
なんとか。
Stick around to find out about my new piano course available at artmaster.com. If we play all of the white notes from C to C on a keyboard, we get a C major scale. This is because the C major scale doesn't have any sharps or flats, it's all on just the D major. A major could be the major scale with no sharps or flats, effectively the default scale in music theory, the starting point of both music and the alphabet. It would make sense, right? The keyboard could look like this, which initially will look very weird, but it only really looks weird because we're so used to the system we already have. These notes wouldn't be called sharp, they would sound like our familiar sharp notes. This note here would sound like a C sharp. It would be tuned to the same frequency that we tune our C sharp to, but we would just call it C. And these notes here wouldn't be called F sharp and G sharp, they would sound like them, but they would be referred to as F and G. As I said before, this looks weird, it looks like an A minor scale, but it actually would be an A major scale. So why is the musical keyboard, why is our musical system not set up this way? Why is the default major scale and not the scale? Not A minor scale is here, and this D Dorian scale, and this F Lydian scale, and this E Phrygian scale, etc. Our musical system wasn't built around just the major scale, but around all of these scales. What we can collectively...
I have a habit of modding F125 a little bit too much, but Class starts up a brand new mode, so the career mode where you decide what happens in qualifying. Let's get into it. So here we have, will be a link to choose the mod for the next round of raid. Welcome everybody with the garage. It looks a little bit weird. The mod is, it looks quite nice, not gonna lie. Let's get our first lap down, see what type of time we do. I should also mention the race will be modded. So the mod has a few quality of life improvements. I've got a little more slipstream, dirty air has been tweaked, a slight bit more tire wear, some more curb sensitivity as well. It makes it a bit more challenging for everyone, including myself. But lap 1 is almost done, 2 green sectors, of course, got no traffic ahead of us. Okay, we're across the line, we go P2 somehow. There's gonna be some more rain, the whole qualifying is gonna be rainy. As I start my final lap in qualifying, let's get into what mods will be used during this series. So there's 24 mods and there's 6 categories. They are curb sensitivity, weight, slipstream, grip, altitude and downforce, and there's 4 different levels. So we've used up altitude, so the next time we get altitude, if you vote for it, it's gonna be level 2. And by the end, we will get to the level 4 ones, which will be quite crazy. And you guys can choose them. So whatever you vote the most for, I'll use that in the next one. I'm curious to see what you guys pick for episode 2 in China. Okay, back to the qualifying. We're looking pretty good so far, still P6 and 8 tenths up on our previous lap. That is looking nice. Oh, it looks like there's been an incident and Lando is out of the race. That is a bad crash. He clipped the wall on the end there. Alex is also taken out. We've dropped down to P10. No, I've crashed. Okay, that looks so staged. I thought those guys would ghost and my lap was ruined anyways. We're out. We're dropping down. That is a terrible start to the season. Alex goes P3 even though he did crash. We go down to P16. We have a 5 grid place penalty. In fact, Stroll and Sainz get penalties as well. Our teammate is like 2 seconds.
AdMob makes it easy to monetize your mobile game. Rewarded ads become part of the game.
There are exactly 16 optimally bad games of tic-tac-toe. So I wasn't going to make another tic-tac-toe video, but then the other day I was playing again with my 3-year-old son, and I realized that I was using a very particular strategy, which I think other parents will be familiar with. See, he's just learning, so I wanted him to win sometimes, but I also wanted him to get a sense for the experience of competition. So if I had a winning move, I would take it, and if he had a winning move, I would block it. But aside from that, I wanted to play as badly as possible to give him ample opportunity to win. I did my best, but when I got home, you know I had to write a computer program to make the whole thing a little more systematic. Here's how I went about it. First, I made an exhaustive dictionary of the 256,128 possible games of tic-tac-toe and their owners. Each entry in the dictionary consisted of a set of exclusion methods, based on this number, followed by a value that encodes the outcome of the game. The value of 1 means that X, or player 1, wins. A value of -1 means that O wins, and a value of 0 means that it's a draw. Now, before we go on, I have to address the topic of symmetry. See, in my previous tic-tac-toe videos, I made a point of counting symmetrical games as the same game, but in this case, I thought that might distort things a little. Take this position, for example. A skilled player would look at this and see that there are really 2 possible responses for O, one of the corners or one of the edges. Due to symmetry, both corners are essentially the same, and all 4 edges are essentially the same. If O responds in one of the edges, it's destined to be a cat's game, with the players taking turns blocking each other's winning moves. On the other hand, if O responds with one of the inviting corner positions, they're destined to lose, because X will surely respond in the opposite corner and create a fork. So how do we evaluate the state of this position for the 2 players? Well, it depends on the quality of O as a player. Again, let's let 1 represent X winning the game, -1 represent O winning, and 0 represent a tie. If O is a perfect player, they will avoid the trap, and a draw is essentially guaranteed, so the expected value of the position is 0. On the other hand, if O is skilled enough to recognize the underlying symmetry, but doesn't think strategically beyond that, the expected value is +1/2, since they're selecting between 2 possibilities, edge or corner, one of which is a draw, and the other of which is a victory for X. Funnily enough, though, if O is selecting their next move completely randomly, and with no understanding of the symmetry of the position, the expected value of the position is 1/3, since there are 4 edges that will lead to a draw, and only 2 corners that will lead to X winning. Anyway, I don't know how many 3-year-olds you've played tic-tac-toe against recently, but in my experience, they are much more like this 3rd player. And so, in my exhaustive dictionary of all possible tic-tac-toe games and their outcomes, I did not reduce the space of possible games based on symmetry. Anyway, back to my computer program. The algorithm hinged on evaluating board positions by averaging the result of every possible completion of the game from that point on. Take this board position, for example, with 4 moves left to go. There are 21 different possible ways that this game can play out. 11 of them are victories for X, which have a score of 1. 6 of them are victories for O, which have a score of -1. And 4 of them are draws, which have a score of 0. Taking a weighted average of these scores, we get a value of 5/21, or roughly 0.238 for this board position, indicating that it's somewhat advantageous for X. By the way, there's actually something subtly wrong about my reasoning here, which I ultimately had to correct. Can you spot it? We'll come back to it in a moment. Anyway, now that we have a way of evaluating board positions, all we have to do to play as badly as possible is select the move that results in the best possible board position for the other player, which is to say the move that gives them the most paths to victory and us the fewest. So let's take a look at a game I played with my 3-year-old and see how this algorithm works in action. I played as X, going first, which is a significant advantage, as you can see by the expected value of 0.297 for the empty board. My goal was to lower this value, pushing it as negative as possible, since a negative value indicates more positive outcomes for O, my 3-year-old son. The best I could do on this first move was to lower the expected value to 0.2 by choosing an edge, and so that's what I did. My son responded with an adjacent edge. Not technically the worst possible move, but pretty darn close. In response, I once again chose the move with the lowest possible score, the right edge. This got the expected value down to 0.172. Still an advantage for me, but we're making progress. At this point, my son spotted that I was on the verge of winning and blocked me with the center square. I was pumped. This reduced the expected value down to -0.367. Finally, he had the upper hand. Now, of course, he had 2 in a row at this point, and I could have just let him win. But what kind of a life lesson does that impart? I needed to teach him that sometimes the world is cold and hard. So I blocked his winning move. At this point, to my delight, my son chose the upper right corner, a fork. I, of course, blocked one of his winning moves, but he saw the other one and won. As a gleeful smile came across his face, I reflected on the fact that all of my poor play in the early game set him up for this joyful opportunity. I had truly triumphed, by which I mean I lost. Now, it didn't always go down this way. Here's another game, this time in which he went first. He started in the upper edge, and I responded with the opposite edge, yielding an expected value of 0.37. Remember, I wanted the numbers to be more positive this time, since he was playing as X. Next, he chose the highly respectable upper right-hand corner. I blocked it, of course, since I wasn't just gonna let him win, but things were still looking up for him. Until, that is, he chose the middle square. Since I can't let him win, I have to block him in the lower left-hand corner. But alas, in doing so, I forced him into a fork, and couldn't help but win the game. In the end, I played 16 games with my son, of which he won 7, I won 5 despite my best efforts, and we tied 4 times. Thus, an empirical estimate for the expected value of playing against my 3-year-old son with my optimal strategy is 1/8, indicating a slight weighting in his favor. This, frankly, is perfect. He gets to experience both winning and losing, but enjoys the fact that he wins a little more than he loses. He also experiences a few draws, which, while boring, prepare him well for the higher echelons of tic-tac-toe competition. So remember I mentioned earlier that there was a mistake in my calculation for the expected value of a board position? Here's the problem. Say that we're in this position, with 3 moves left in the game, considering all the options before us. We can represent these options as a tree, accounting for every possible next move by X, response by O, and final move by X. Now, my initial approach was to just look at all the results and average out their values. 3 wins by X divided by 5 total outcomes yields an expected value of 0.6. But let's think again about what it means to play uniformly randomly. If every move is equally likely, then each of X's first moves has a probability of 1/3. In response, O will always have 2 choices, each of which has a probability of 1/2. And then the final move by X only has 1 choice, with probability 1. Multiplying these probabilities out, we get a probability of 1/6 for each of the outcomes at the bottom, but 1/3 for the outcome in which X plays the winning move right away. Adding together the branches in which X wins, we get a probability of 2/3, or 0.666 repeating, slightly higher than the 0.6 we got earlier. The basic issue is that because some games end early, uniformly random play does not correspond to uniformly random outcomes. So in my code, I had to adjust the weighting somewhat to get the final board position values you've seen in this video. Glad we got that sorted out. Well, actually, I did think of another oversight here in my quest for optimal badness. It has to do with an assumption about how I myself will play as the game unfolds. Can you figure out what it is? I'll pin the first comment that points out the issue.
Let's take a break。最痛嗰排，連揸住個鑊鏟都冇力啊！食咗3-4個月雞全 UC2， 手腕、手踭呢啲痛咗10幾年嘅關節位，竟然都會有覺得唔痛嘅一日。我係雞全 UC2 關節配方嘅真實用家，退咗休幾年啦，手踭、手腕我都有關節痛嘅問題。啲仔女就買咗好多藥膏、藥貼咁俾我搽啦、貼啦，都係治標唔治本。試過有次煮飯，真係閃電痛啊！揸住喺手嗰支鑊鏟都跌咗落嚟添，嘭一聲。後來佢哋買咗雞全 UC2 俾我，食咗3。4個月，手腕、手踭呢啲痛咗10幾年嘅關節位，竟然都有覺得唔痛嘅一日。我真心推薦所有關節痛嘅人，快啲食雞全 UC2。
One last thing. Just for fun, I decided to try playing 2 of my optimally bad tic-tac-toe players against each other. Now, Often there was more than one equally bad choice. For example, at the beginning, any edge is equally bad. So I mapped out all the possible worst games and came up with a number. There are exactly 16 optimally bad games of tic-tac-toe. Now, this number is actually double counting symmetrical games. If you reduce by symmetry, there are only 2 different optimally bad games of tic-tac-toe, and even those are practically the same. I should say, by the way, that the concept of playing this strategy against itself is pretty flawed. The assumption in this video was that we were playing against a 3-year-old, who we've modeled as a random player. But if you're playing against someone who's also trying to lose, we're entering the territory of a variant called Miserere tic-tac-toe, for which you'd probably want to use something like a Minimax algorithm, as I talked about in my second video. Still, you have to admit, this is some pretty bad tic-tac-toe playing. By the way, if you want to try out my tic-tac-toe expected value game for yourself, I'm throwing it up on Patreon, along with the code I used to write it. I'm making the post free, but if you're able to sign up for a paid tier, it would really help me out, and you get access to some other cool stuff. Now, I know that becoming a patron isn't for everyone, but the good news is that that's not the only way you can support my channel. Because if you're the kind of person who spent 10 minutes watching me describe in detail how to build a computer program to lose at tic-tac-toe, you're gonna love Brilliant, the sponsor of this video. Brilliant is the perfect platform for tinkerers, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, coding, and AI, crafted by an award-winning team from places like MIT and Google. If you enjoyed dissecting games like I did in this video, you'll love the way that their courses are filled with little puzzles to solve, which help you master the content in a fun, engaging way. They've also managed to break up complex topics into short, convenient lessons to help you establish a daily learning habit. You know, watching a video like this is a great way to create a kind of reference or pointer to knowledge. You know an idea is out there, but it doesn't really live inside of you. There's obviously value to this, but in my experience, real creativity comes from engaging with and truly internalizing knowledge. To try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days and get 20% off an annual premium subscription, visit brilliant.org/Mark Evanstein or click the link in the description. Just checking it out supports my channel, and I bet you'll love what you discover.
今時今日，筍工定義人人唔同，無論係彈性上班之鬼，定係 work-life balance 之。
If you're not familiar with the iceberg meme, it's basically just a fun way to categorize a topic starting from the well-known and mainstream ideas at the top and then going progressively deeper into unusual. And obscure ideas. And the great fun of these iceberg memes is seeing how weird it gets as you go down. So I thought I would create a music theory iceberg, and today we're going to start above ground at the tip of the iceberg and work our way down into the murky weirdness below. So starting at the very top, we've got A equals 440 hertz. This is what's called concert pitch, a standard universalized pitch that we tune A above middle C to allow all instruments to be in tune with each other without having to coordinate which note to tune to. Pretty much every piece of music you've ever listened to, particularly popular music, will be tuned to 440 hertz. We've also got some time signatures here, most prominently 4/4. As I'm sure you're aware, the vast majority of popular music is in the time signature of 4/4. But we do get some other time signatures sometimes, and the two most common ones beyond 4/4 would be 3/4 and 6/8. Over here we've got 12-tone equal temperament. Pretty much every piece of music you've ever listened to will be in 12-tone equal temperament. Without going into too much depth, it's the way that we define how each note should be in tune with each other. All we have to do to tune something in 12-tone equal temperament is to tune all of the octaves first, and then divide those octaves into 12 equally spaced pitches. Over here we've got our three standard accidentals, natural, sharp and flat. We've got the pentatonic scale, perhaps the most fundamental and straightforward scale in all of music. We've got our two most common clefs, the treble clef and the bass clef. Major and minor, which of course are the two overarching types of tonality in Western music. And they've also snuck in power chords here, which are chords that don't have a major or minor because they don't have a third. They're just a root and a fifth. Right, level 2. So we still haven't gone below the surface yet, but this is the tip of the iceberg with music theory. At the top here we've got harmonic minor. So harmonic minor is a variation on the typical minor scale, on the natural minor scale, where we make one modification, we raise the 7th note. And this makes the scale more appropriate for writing harmony in the minor key. We've got a few more chord types here, chord types beyond major and minor. We've got diminished, augmented, 7th chords, inversions, and suspended chords. And although these chord types are certainly less common than major and minor, these will still turn up in a wide breadth of music in all styles. Over here we've got the blues scale, which is exactly the same as the minor pentatonic scale, but with one additional note that we could call the blue note, the flat fifth. Now, quite an important concept in this tier is circle of fifths. The circle of fifths is sort of a universal tool that ties together various concepts in Western music. On the most basic level, it's a way of working out which sharps and flats are in each key, or in a more advanced usage, you could use the circle of fifths to conceptualize how different key changes might feel brighter or darker. Sequence is a very fundamental element of melody writing. It's basically when you take a phrase, "Let's go out and it can be seen," and then you immediately repeat that phrase, but now at a either higher or lower pitch. Tired, I tried to swim against. And the last thing we've got on this tier is cadences. A cadence is basically just a short chord progression, a short chord movement that resolves a passage. The two main types of cadence that you'll hear used time and time again are the perfect cadence, also known as the authentic cadence, which is 5-1, or the plagal cadence, sometimes referred to as the Amen cadence, that resolves from 4-1. And now we enter the water. And starting us off, we've got this selection of odd time signatures. As the name would suggest, these time signatures are odd, they're unusual, but because of that they have a really intriguing quality, a really unusual sound to the Western listener. Diatonic modes is what you'll think of as just modes, mixed Lydian, Dorian, Lydian, all of those common modes you hear about. A mode is when you take the notes of the scale, but then you treat a different note as the root point, as the starting point. So for example, G Mixolydian is C major, but treating G as the root note. They're called diatonic modes here because they're referring to the modes of the major scale. Modal interchange is obviously related to modes, is when in a piece of music you might switch between using different parallel modes. So one part of the music might be in E Mixolydian, and another might be in E Dorian. Here we've got some different accidental.
Boost your mobile game's revenue with rewarded ads. Unlike regular ads, rewarded ads are a part of the game. They're non-intrusive, valuable to players, and rewind.
Here we've got some different accidental marks. We've got double accidentals. This is a double flat, and this is a double sharp. For example, A double flat would be the note G natural, because we've flattened A twice. And the note A double sharp would be the note B, because we've sharpened A twice. There's various instances where you might need to use a double sharp or double flat when writing something down on sheet music. Down here we have the whole tone scale. This is a very easy scale to remember because it's literally just whole tones, tones going up. Now we mentioned these odd time signatures, or what we might call odd meters, but here we have mixed meter. Mixed meter is when a piece of music switches between different time signatures regularly, mixing different meters together. For example, Good Morning by the Beatles keeps switching time signatures, resulting in what you would call a mixed meter.
Nothing to do to save his life, call his wife in.
Now earlier we had the harmonic minor, here we've got the melodic minor. The melodic minor is another variation on the minor scale. This is the natural minor scale. The harmonic minor scale raises the 7th degree, and the melodic minor then raises the 6th degree as well, effectively to bridge the gap that was created when we raised the 7th degree. Upper chord extensions is basically any time you have a 9th, 11th or 13th chord, and it could be a flat 9 or a sharp 9, or it could even be an add 9 or an add 11, that sort of thing. Anytime you have a chord like that, it's referred to as a upper chord extension. And this funny symbol here is another type of clef. We already had the treble clef and the bass clef. This is what would usually be called the alto clef, and is nowadays only really used for the viola. Now, although normally when you see this symbol it will be an alto clef, this symbol in its most basic form is what we actually call a C clef. The symbol is a stylized C, and it works that whatever line you put the C on is the C line. So in a standard alto clef, we put it so the middle line is passing through the middle of the C, so the middle line is C. This is actually the case with all clefs. A treble clef is what's called a G clef. So although we almost always place it on the second line up like this, making this line the G line, we could place it on a different line, changing where the note G is. And same for the bass clef, this is the F clef. The idea is whatever line passes through these two dots is F. In basic terms, a Neapolitan chord is a major chord built on the flat 2nd degree of the scale. However, it comes with some context as well. The true Neapolitan chord will be voiced like this in the first inversion, and will resolve onto the 5th chord of the key. And in Roman numeral analysis, we can even label the Neapolitan chord with its own unique symbol, a capital N. The augmented 6th is a similar type of chord where you have to use it in a particular context. In basic terms, it's a dominant 7th chord built on the 6th degree of the minor scale. So for example, in the key of A minor, it would be an F7 chord. But the way we use an augmented 6th chord is that our F7 here needs to now move to the 5th chord of the key, in this instance E major. And the voice leading has to be done in a particular way. The F at the bottom of the chord needs to resolve down onto E, and the E flat at the top of the F7 chord needs to resolve up onto E. And this is why it's called an augmented 6th chord. Because here we've got E flat resolving onto E, we actually instead label this as a D sharp, because this not only shows the player that this note is a leading note resolving up onto the E, but it also avoids a bit of an awkward accidental. And because we've labelled this E flat note as a D sharp, it's changed the interval of the chord from a dominant 7th, a minor 7th, into an augmented 6th, F to D sharp. And the last thing to remember with augmented 6th chords is there's actually 3 different types of voicing for them, each named after a different nationality. Another type of chord, this time from rock music rather than classical music, is the Hendrix chord. The Hendrix chord is just another name for a sharp 9 chord, a 7 chord with a sharp 9. So for example, we can have E7 sharp 9. This is our Hendrix chord. As the name suggests, Hendrix was quite a fan of this chord. For example, we can see it here in the Purple Haze. And what makes it so distinctive is that we simultaneously have the major third here, the G sharp, and we also have the minor third here, the G natural, although the most accurate way to notate this would be with an F double sharp. Now, of course, this chord got its name by being used significantly by Jimi Hendrix, but we can also see it in other songs, like here. A pivotal third is when a passage of music minor resolves onto a major chord. For example, this passage of music is in the key of B minor, but resolves with a B major chord, giving it a grand, complete ending. Jazz, where the dominant chord of the key, the 5th chord of the key, has its 5th either flattened flattened or sharpened, and or could have its ninth flattened or sharpened. I say and or because if a chord chart says G alt, for example, it's not specifying a particular type of altered chord. It's just telling the player that they need to play a G dominant 7 chord, but with some alteration made to the 5th and or the 9th. The alterations made... chord, but with some alteration made to the 5th and or the 9th. The alterations made to the dominant chord will add extra tension to the chord, meaning it will have a sweeter resolution when it reaches back to the tonic chord. Polyrhythm is when we have more than one consistent pulse playing at the same time. So, for example, a very common polyrhythm is 3 against 2. 2 consistent pulses in the same time as 3 consistent pulses. A tritone substitution is an idea from jazz music where we substitute a dominant chord with the dominant chord a tritone away from it. This is most commonly done with the 5th chord of the key. So, for example, in the key of C major, we would be substituting our G7 chord for a D flat 7 chord. And what allows this to work is that both those chords, G7 and D flat 7, both contain the same tritone. So they both have the same effective resolution back to the tonic chord. Quartal harmony is harmony built from stacks of fourths. So most of the harmony we deal with is what we would call tertial harmony, harmony built from thirds. All our common chord types, major, minor, diminished, 7th, 9th, anything like that, is built by stacking thirds up. But alternatively, we could make chords by stacking different intervals, like fourths. For example, in Tarkus by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, these arpeggiated chords played on the organ are all built by stacking fourths up. As you can see from the chord labels, because our chord labeling system is built around tertiary harmony, when we're dealing with quartal harmony, the names can get a little bit odd. You'll see a lot of sus4, for example. And the last thing we've got in this tier is minor scale modes. So earlier we mentioned diatonic modes. These are modes of the major scale, where we've taken the major scale, but we've started on a different degree, resulting in a new scale, like Mixolydian, Dorian, etc. Minor scale modes are when we make modes from a minor scale. So for example, we might take the melodic minor scale, and by starting on a different scale degree, we generate a new alternative scale. For example, the 4th mode of the melodic minor scale is what we would call Lydian dominant, and this is the scale used in the Simpsons theme song. Alright, we're really getting into the depths of this ocean now. Metric modulation. Metric modulation is when we switch from one time signature to another, but the two are connected by a consistent magnetic relationship. For example, we could switch from 6/8 to 4/4 to make the two sort of connect together by making the 8th note work the same amount in 6/8 as it is in 4/4. So the two different meters sort of get married with consistent note value. Until a full rotation has happened when they fall back into sync together. For example, the song 5/4 by Gorillaz has a guitar riff in 5/4, but a drum pattern in 4/4. So after the first bar, the two go out of sync until they've rotated enough that they're back together again. Any scale with 8 notes, but Most commonly, it's referring to one of two symmetrical scales. One that goes semitone, tone, semitone, tone, semitone, tone, semitone, tone, and the other does the opposite, going tone, semitone, tone, semitone, tone, semitone, tone, semitone. This second octatone scale here that goes tone, semitone is also referred to as a diminished scale, and is what we hear at the beginning of the song Just by Radiohead. The double harmonic scales are two scales that are often referred to with a variety of different names. The double harmonic major, sometimes just referred to as the double harmonic scale, is just like the major scale but with a flattened second degree and a flattened sixth degree. And the double harmonic minor scale, sometimes referred to as the Hungarian minor scale, is exactly the same as our usual harmonic minor scale but with the fourth degree raised. The double harmonic minor is also actually the fourth mode of the double harmonic major. A mood chord is just a particular name for what you might think of as an add-to chord, a major chord with the second degree added in as well. The name mood chord was popularised by the band Steely Dan, who were particularly fond of this chord type. Is when we have more than one key playing at the same time. A composer well known for his use of polytonality is Charles Ives. For example, in this piece, the two upper voices of the choir are in the key of C major, and the two lower voices are in the key of B flat major. Bebop scales are variations on typical scales where an extra note has been added in. For example, the bebop dominant scale is just like the Mixolydian scale, but it also features the unaltered seventh degree, so we've got the flat seventh and the natural seventh in the scale. Or you could have bebop Dorian, which is just like regular Dorian, but also includes the major third. These are the sort of scales that were used by bebop musicians like Charlie Parker, Miles Davis and John Coltrane. However, it's important to remember that the idea of the bebop scales wasn't theorised until years after the bebop era. It was more of a retrospective way of analysing how these players performed. His name is Wagner's opera Tristan and Isolde. Alright, we're approaching the Resolution. This piece by Arnold Schoenberg very much avoids having any sense of key or resolution. We're approaching the bottom of this iceberg, the second to last tier, and we're swing ratios. Swing as a rhythm is effectively when two eighth notes have unequal rhythms to each other, where one eighth note is longer than the other eighth note. And a swing ratio is a way of describing how much the difference is. So, for example, a 1-to-1 relationship would be not swing, it would be straight, because both eighth notes have equal duration. However, a 2-to-1 swing feel would be triplet feel, because the first note has double the duration of the second. 3-to-1 ratio would be a dotted eighth note swing like this. The first note has 3 times as much duration as the latter. A 3-to-2 ratio would be a type of quintuplet swing like this. Or we could have a 4-to-1 relationship like this, which is also a type of quintuplet swing. Of course, it's very important to remember that swing players aren't thinking in terms of swing ratios when they play. They're just letting it naturally swing, and the ratio to which they're swinging might even change throughout the performance. But swing ratios can be very useful when you're trying to program swing into a DAW. Overtones. So pretty much any time you play a note, for example on a piano, you're not just hearing that note. If I play an A on the piano, we are hearing what's called the fundamental pitch of A, but we're also hearing a series of overtones above that, quieter sympathetic notes, which effectively colour the tone of the note. And they always follow the exact same pattern of intervals in what's called the overtone series, or the harmonic series. The intervals start off by being very fundamental recognisable intervals, like octave, perfect fifth, perfect fourth, major third, minor third. Then, as we get into the quieter and much harder to hear harmonics, they venture into intervals that we wouldn't find in our standard tuning system, like a sub-minor third, a super major second, and so on. And the amazing thing is, even though all of these are technically separate frequencies, separate pitches, our ear perceives them all as one cohesive note. 24 tet. So right at the beginning, we talked about 12-tone equal temperament, where our instruments are tuned by tuning the octave and then dividing the space between those octaves into 12 equally spaced pitches. Well, 24 tet is 24-tone equal temperament. Tet is just short for tone equal temperament. So 24 tet is a way of creating what you might call microtonal music, by giving us an extra microtonal note between every standard pitch on our piano. For example, here's a piece of music by Ivan Wiszengradsky, which is written in 24-tone equal temperament. And off to the right of our 24 tet here, we have some microtonal accidentals, which we could use to notate our 24 tet music. We have a half sharp, so we could have, for example, an A half sharp, which is a note pitched between the notes A and B flat. We could have a half flat, so a half flat would be a note pitched between A and A flat. And we could even have something like this, which is a sharp and a half. A equals 415 Hertz. So right at the beginning, we were looking at A equals 440 Hertz, which is what we call concert pitch, the standard pitch that we tune A above middle C to. The standard of A440 was only brought in around 100 years ago, and before that, historically, a wide range of different tunings were used across different geographic areas. 415 is what we call Baroque tuning, and is almost exactly one semitone lower than modern concert pitch. Baroque tuning is used when a performer wants to try and recreate the original sound of the composition closer to the original tuning it would have been written in. However, it's important to remember that 415 wasn't a historic standard, it was just one of many different tunings a Baroque instrument may have been tuned to. Just intervals. If an interval is just, it means it's been tuned to a perfect simple ratio. So for example, a justly tuned perfect fifth would be the ratio of 3:2. If you tune an instrument to just intervals, it's what we call just intonation or pure intonation. And although theoretically it's the purest way of tuning intervals, it presents a bit.
真正打動人心嘅味道，唔止係講求味。
仲食得咩？咁夜唔好摘啊！邊個行摘啫？我食得啫嘛。咁夜係啊，聽日仲知唔知邊科啊？ 啊！你嗰個山啊，嗰個係咁去摘啦嗰日。屋頂定係點啊？咩啊？搭咗屋頂定點啊？係啊，樓梯啊。爬到屋頂都幾難埋咯。我屋頂冇到。你冇揦嘢係嘛？你耍完一晚又一晚，你死得未啊？做少少嘢都喺度拖成年。唔好成日師傅啊！師傅啊！唔係喎，揾唔揾到啊？揾唔到喎。喺嗰間房都揾唔到。呢間房啊，打埋咗間房。係啊。打埋咗間房，掟住師傅揾啊！你做乜佢唔得話你啊？嗰日地政檢查。 結冰，攞出嚟。得啦。我豆高啲嘅，講起豆高啲豆花喎。
Vehicle Legends just added 2 new cars. They added this Alfa Romeo 4C and this Audi TT RS. Vehicle Legends just added...
When this big kiddo was climbing in front of these kids, they looked really concerned about what might happen if he lost his balance. And then this happened.你見唔見到地下有嘢喺度啊？你見到我抹地啊？唔使啊，嗰啲呢度啊，攞翻地拖。我哋先出去養下佢。 得未啊？你玩完未啊？鋪翻個垃圾袋啊！抌咗包垃圾先，轉頭過嚟同我攞翻個地拖同埋三蚊埋晒燈同門。
AdMob makes it easy to monetize. Mobile game. Rewarded ads become part of the game.
巢水解蛋白，高效降低致敏性。雀巢最多醫護推薦防敏廠商，立即試用。
哇！熄燈啊，除眼鏡啊！ bê 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 mày phân cao mày à mấy đứa nói cho mình phân cao à nhưng mà chắc mà phân cao cao tôi là
thấy đi luôn
開演儀式現在開始。
看龍蛋子。
請各位留意。
這個第一把打。
呢個嗰度。
嘣。
嘣你出。
再搞啲 B 啲聲，隨住啲人要。
你今晚嗰個鬧鐘啊，你同我熄撚晒佢啊！夜晚嘈親我整咗佢話俾你聽啊！嗰啲1點半啊會響嗰啲鬧鐘，唔該你同我熄晒佢。如果唔係我